Britain's Finance Minister Rachel Reeves, in her first budget, announced the country's largest tax increase in 3 decades to address the $28 billion funding gap. Reeves plans to raise taxes by $52 billion a year, with a large share falling on businesses.
The scale and seriousness of the situation that we have inherited cannot be underestimated. Together, the hole in our public finances this year, which recurs every year, the compensation schemes that they did not fund, and their failure to assess the scale of the challenges facing our public services means that this budget raises taxes by £40 billion.
Rachel Reeves' budget brings substantial changes to Britain's tax landscape, with a particular focus on corporate contributions. The increase in social security tax for businesses, set to take effect in April, aims to support underfunded public services and compensation payments long delayed. Other revenue-raising measures target capital gains, inheritance taxes and private equity income, all aimed at bolstering the budget. Prime Minister Keir Starmer has also signalled that individuals with the broadest shoulders will contribute more. The problem is those shoulders are already planning an escape to safe havens in Europe, fearing this new tax landscape. Reeves' budget announcement has largely been met with cautious optimism from investors. Reeves, a former Bank of England economist, has assured that Labour will avoid the unfunded tax cut missteps of previous administrations, which had triggered market instability in 2022. Her tax plan, forecasted to equal 1.25% of economic output, echoes a 1993 Conservative tax increase following a recession. While many Londoners expressed optimism that working people will not pay an increase in income tax or national insurance contributions, others were nervous that businesses will be taking the burden of costs and could get passed on to those below.
I'm surprised they've kept to a few of their promises, and I see a few things good happening on the horizon. Could be wrong. Politics.
I think they're in a really difficult position. They've got a big hole to dig themselves out of, and it's kind of a lose-lose. And I think the opposition are going to pounce on that. I think hopefully most of us know better than to believe the rhetoric that they're going to be coming out with on pointing fingers. I think they've done the best they can in difficult circumstances based on the numerous priorities that the country have got at the moment. It's basically where I'm at.
Let's talk more about this. Our correspondent Oli Bharat is now joining us live from London. Oli, good to see you. There are so many reactions from Londoners and also Britons after Rachel Reeves presented her budget. What are some of those reactions that you're hearing?
Well, I think one of the main reactions to this budget is some surprise at the sheer scale of the tax rises that Rachel Reeves announced. We knew that there was going to be a big hike in tax for many British businesses and individuals in different ways, but it wasn't expected that the scale of it would be as large as Rachel Reeves announced. £40 billion in total, well over $50 billion worth of tax rises. Now, she insists that that is necessary, partly to fund public services, but also to try and boost investment in some areas into public services as well, and just meet ongoing government commitments, because she says she was left a disastrous economic legacy by the Conservative government. Now, the Conservatives deny that and accuse Rachel Reeves of breaking manifesto pledges, and that's one of the key areas of reaction as well, particularly from opposition parties who say that the Labour Party really wasn't campaigning heading into the election earlier this year on the basis of a budget like this. Rachel Reeves and people around her say that the situation has simply changed. They weren't aware of how bad Britain's finances were. As I say, that's a characterisation that the Conservatives absolutely reject. But this is a gamble for many reasons, and one of the reasons is the scale of the tax hikes, given some of the ability now for the opposition parties to accuse Labour of breaking manifesto pledges, but also with that extra investment that's going to flow into different parts of British life in the next few few years, particularly the National Health Service over the next year or so. Labour knows that with this scale of tax rises and that scale of promised investment, it has to deliver improving public services. And that's what many British people will tell you off the back of this budget. They will say, well, if there's all this extra money going into the NHS, for example, we want to see service provision significantly improve in the years ahead.
Oli, talking about investments, is it really true that investors are confident about this budget?
Well, I think market reaction has been fairly relaxed over the last 24 hours or so. As the speech was being delivered, we didn't see markets moving much at all. There was a period after the budget, yesterday afternoon UK time, where it just looked like British borrowing costs might be spiking slightly. Perhaps some investors were slightly spooked by the scale of what Rachel Reeves was announcing. But she had trailed a large amount of it via speeches in Washington, via the media as well. And that was partly designed to make sure that markets wouldn't be spooked by anything, that they knew the broad sense of what was coming, to try and avoid the kind of episode we saw when Liz Truss was Prime Minister and Kwasi Kwarteng was her Finance Minister, and they surprised markets with a lot of unfunded measures that were announced to the House of Commons in their so-called mini-budget. That did spook markets. It did lead to a spike in borrowing costs, and it led to a very rapid removal of Liz Truss as Prime Minister. Labour wanted to avoid that, and I think they will feel relatively confident. There is always the possibility that after a budget like this, that some specific measure can unravel in the hours and days afterwards, and that in turn can lead to a slightly delayed negative reaction from the markets. But so far, I think that the Labour government will feel that they've achieved some sense of stability, at least off the back of that budget announcement.
Oli Barrett, we'll have to leave it there. Oli Barrett is our correspondent in London. Thank you, Oli.